All right, welcome to the deep dive. We get so many questions from you, the learner. And one that just keeps coming up over and over again is, well, this. How do we actually get smarter?
Yeah.
So today we're going to dive into this article. It's called 10 Evidence-Backed Ways to Become Smarter. And we're gonna unpack this together.
Yeah, this is a great piece from Healthline. It was reviewed by Dr. Timothy Legg and written by Kirsten Nunes, published March 2020. So, it's got some good science behind it. And it really gets into some practical strategies. I think one of the things that I like about this piece is that it sort of implicitly addresses the two types of intelligence, right? There's that crystallized intelligence, that's the stuff the vocabulary, the knowledge, the skills, that generally increases as we age.
Right.
But then there's that fluid intelligence, which has more to do with your ability to reason, your capacity for abstract thinking, problem solving. And so in our deep dive today, we're going to be talking about ways to boost both of those.
Exactly. And for you, the learner, our mission here is to really equip you with some solid, actionable insights. Like we want to go beyond just listing the 10 ways, right?
Yeah.
We want to understand the why behind them, and really aim for those moments where you have those aha moments where you're like, oh, that makes so much sense.
Right. Absolutely.
So let's jump right in. The first area this article highlights is the power of physical activity.
Yeah, and I love this. The fact that moving your body is good for your brain. It's really fascinating. And they point to a 2018 study that showed that even light exercise can boost activity in the hippocampus. Now, the hippocampus, for you, the learner, that's a key area of your brain that's really important for forming new memories. So think of exercise as like, fertilizer for your brain's memory center. They also found that exercise strengthens connections between the hippocampus and other brain regions that are involved in regulating memory.
That's so interesting. So like even a brisk walk, right, isn't just good for your heart, but it's like actively building a better foundation for your memories.
Yeah.
And then it gets even more interesting. A 2014 study that they talk about found that exercise actually increases the volume of the hippocampus. They think this might be because aerobic activity encourages the growth of new neurons. So it's not just about, feeling good in the moment. It's about actual long-term positive changes to the structure of your brain.
Yeah, and if we connect this back to the big picture, it really underscores how interconnected our physical and cognitive well-being is. The key takeaway here for you is that you don't need to train for a triathlon to see these benefits.
Right.
The article specifically mentions things like walking, yoga, hiking, body weight workouts. Regular moderate activity can be very powerful.
Okay. So let's move from actively engaging our bodies to maybe a more passive but equally important activity.
Yes.
We all know how we feel after a bad night's sleep, but what's really going on in our brains?
Well, sleep is far from passive, right? This is an incredibly active time for your brain. And one of the crucial things it's doing is memory consolidation. So basically, it's taking all the experiences of the day and solidifying those into long-term memories. Think of it as like hitting the save button on everything you've learned. Adequate sleep also prepares your brain to be more receptive to new information when you wake up. If your brain hasn't had a chance to sort of do all that filing, it's less ready to take in new stuff.
And the article highlights a 2019 study that really drives this point home. They found that even mild sleep deprivation can really significantly impact working memory. Now, working memory for you, the learner, is like your mental scratch pad. That's where you hold and manipulate information to solve problems or understand new ideas. So sleep deprivation essentially shrinks the size of that scratch pad.
Yeah, it's like trying to cram too many things into your mental RAM, right? And it just slows everything down.
Totally.
So this raises a really important point. Are we really prioritizing sleep in our busy lives? The practical advice here is, getting enough quality sleep isn't a luxury. It's a fundamental requirement for your brain to function optimally and for you to learn effectively.
Yeah.
Think about those times when you've tried to learn something new on very little sleep. It's almost impossible.
Yeah. It's like trying to pour water into a leaky bucket,
Exactly.
Okay, next up we have meditation. And I know this can sound a little woo-woo for some people, but the science is really increasingly showing some tangible cognitive benefits here.
Yeah, yeah. And what's really cool is how quickly some of these benefits can show up. They mentioned a 2010 study that linked meditation to improved executive functioning and working memory after only 4 days. Executive functions are like the CEO of your brain, responsible for planning, organizing, managing your time effectively. Meditation can actually help train that CEO to be more efficient.
And there's a more recent 2019 study that kind of echoed those findings.
Yeah.
It observed increased attention, recognition ability, and working memory after participants engaged in just 8 weeks of 13-minute guided meditations. And 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 get this, they also saw improvements in mood and anxiety. It's so interesting how interconnected our emotional state and our cognitive abilities seem to be.
Yeah, and the researchers in that 2019 study speculated that the emotional benefits of meditation, the reduction in stress and anxiety, likely contributed to those cognitive gains. When your mind isn't cluttered with worry, it's clearer and more receptive to learning. So, the actionable steps here are pretty simple. There are a lot of meditation apps, guided videos online. You can even find local classes. And if the idea of traditional meditation just feels kind of daunting, remember even a few minutes of focused breathing can start to make a difference.
Okay. Let's switch gears a little bit and talk about a staple in many people's routines, coffee.
Ah,
It turns out that jolt we get isn't just a feeling, there's some interesting brain chemistry happening.
right. The article explained that caffeine works by blocking adenosine, and adenosine is actually a brain chemical that inhibits the release of stimulatory substances. So by blocking adenosine, caffeine basically takes the brakes off your brain's natural stimulants, like dopamine, leading to that feeling of alertness. And
Right.
that increased alertness can enhance learning and mental
Yeah,
performance.
they mentioned a 2014 study that indicated caffeine can improve attention, which, as we talked about, is so foundational for being able to focus and absorb new information.
Right, absolutely. But the article does include this really important point. Moderation is key. While that morning cup can be beneficial, too much caffeine can lead to anxiety, the jitters, can disrupt sleep, all of which are counterproductive to cognitive function.
Right. So it's about striking that balance.
Exactly.
So now, if coffee's not your thing, or even if it is, the article also talks about green tea.
Yeah, and what's intriguing about green tea is it actually contains a smaller amount of caffeine compared to coffee. So it gives you a little bit gentler lift, but it's also rich in a compound called epigallocatechin gallate, or EGCG. And a 2019 review suggested that EGCG may actually promote the growth of axons and dendrites. These are the extensions of neurons that allow them to communicate really the infrastructure of your cognitive abilities.
Mhm.
So while the exact mechanisms are still being studied, EGCG appears to support the physical growth and connectivity of your brain cells. So it's laying that groundwork for more efficient information processing.
And then a 2017 review found that green tea can enhance both attention and working memory.
Yeah.
So it sounds like it's kind of that synergy, right? The small amount of caffeine combined with these other beneficial components that gives green tea its cognitive edge.
Exactly. Yeah.
So for you, the learner, incorporating green tea into your routine could be a really nice way to support your brain function.
Absolutely.
All right.
Yeah.
Now, we can't talk about boosting brain power without talking about the fuel we give our brains, which is food.
Right.
And the article really emphasizes the vital role of nutrient-rich foods for overall brain health. They specifically highlight omega-3 fatty acids, flavonoids, and vitamin K. So it's like, if we're fueling our brains with the right nutrients, then all these other, cognitive enhancers that we've been talking about will be even more effective.
Exactly. You gotta give your brain the building blocks it needs.
Exactly, exactly. So let's zoom in on these nutrients a little bit.
Mhm.
Starting with omega-3 fatty acids. A 2017 review highlighted their role as major structural components of the brain itself.
Right.
And the great news is that they're found in such delicious and accessible foods. You've got your fatty fish like salmon, shellfish, seaweed, also plant-based sources like flax seeds, avocados, nuts,
Yeah, so many options.
so many options.
Yeah.
Okay, then we have flavonoids. These are powerful plant compounds. A 2015 review linked these compounds to positive cognitive outcomes,
Mm-hmm.
including, improvements in those key areas of executive functioning and working memory.
Right.
And you can find flavonoids in, berries, tea, cocoa, soybeans, whole grains, like
Eat the rainbow, right?
the rainbow.
Yeah, all those colorful fruits and vegetables.
And then finally, vitamin K, which a 2019 review, underscored its role in the survival of brain cells and overall cognitive performance. The primary sources of vitamin K are leafy green vegetables, so kale, spinach, collard greens.
Yeah.
So the practical advice here is pretty simple. Focus on incorporating a diverse range of these nutrient-rich foods into your daily diet.
I mean, it really just reinforces that idea that what we eat has a direct impact on how well our brains function.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So moving on to something that engages our brains in a really different way. The article talks about playing music.
Yeah, this is one of my favorites.
Oh, me too.
Yeah, playing an instrument is not just fun, it's a full body and brain workout.
It is, yeah.
It engages so many different parts of your brain at the same time, auditory perception, physical coordination, memory, pattern recognition.
Yeah. And the article mentions a 2013 review that noted that this simultaneous engagement of sensory and cognitive abilities really challenges the brain in unique ways, potentially leading to an increase in both cognitive function and neural connectivity.
Right. So like, for you, the learner, even if you've never picked up an instrument before, it's never too late to start. And for those who already play, challenging yourself with new pieces or even learning a new instrument can continue to provide those benefits.
Absolutely. Okay, our next strategy is one that many of us, hopefully including you, the learner, engage in regularly, and that is reading.
Yeah.
But it's fascinating to understand how deeply this impacts our brains.
It really is. The article actually cites a 2015 review stating that reading is like a total brain workout. It stimulates pretty much every part of the brain and strengthens those connections between them.
Oh, wow.
It's complex. It involves focused attention, the ability to predict what might come next in a story, working memory to keep track of all the characters and plot, long-term memory to make connections to other things you've read, abstract reasoning, comprehension, even just visually processing the words on the page.
And a 2013 study found that reading can enhance the connectivity between specific brain regions that are involved in comprehension.
Yeah.
And these effects can even last for a few days after you finish reading,
Yeah.
which suggests some lasting cognitive strengthening. So, the encouragement here is clear. Make reading a regular habit, and you'll strengthen all sorts of cognitive functions.
Absolutely. Now, this next point might seem kind of obvious, but it's so important. The lifelong pursuit of learning. The article highlights a 2018 review that found a link between a longer duration of formal education and higher intelligence.
And a 2019 review found that continuing to engage in learning throughout life can actually enhance cognitive function and protect the brain as we age.
It really is. It's like keeping your brain in shape, continuous mental exercise.
Yeah, totally.
And the great thing is, lifelong learning doesn't have to mean, going back to school.
Right.
There are so many options, listening to podcasts like this one, watching TED Talks, attending lectures, taking up a new hobby, learning a language, reading books on new subjects.
All about that curiosity, right?
It is, yeah. Just keeping your mind engaged.
So finally, the last piece of this puzzle is something so fundamental to our human experience, and that is socialization. Turns out that our connections with others actually play a really significant role in our mental fitness.
Yeah, for sure. A 2018 study indicated that social interaction isn't just enjoyable, it actually stimulates the mind and can boost our cognitive abilities. Think about it. Engaging in conversations, sharing ideas, navigating those social dynamics, it all requires mental processing.
And the article even gives some ideas, for increasing your social engagement.
Yeah.
Things like volunteering, joining clubs, sports teams, taking group classes, a book club, even just reaching out to old friends.
Yeah.
It's a good reminder that our connections with others are not just, good for our emotional well-being, but also contribute to a sharper mind.
Absolutely. So just to recap those 10 evidence-backed strategies: regular exercise, sufficient sleep, meditation, moderate coffee and green tea consumption, a nutrient-rich diet, playing a musical instrument, reading, continuous learning, and social engagement.
So much good stuff. And as you think about all this, the learner, think about which of these areas resonates most with you. Where might you integrate a new habit or strengthen an existing one? Remember, cultivating intelligence isn't just about knowing more stuff. It's about actively engaging your brain, being curious, and embracing that journey of lifelong learning. What will you explore next?
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Yeah, it's been great.
It has been.